Welcome back to Dm-Nastics, the gym for dungeon masters to work out their minds. I'm one of your hosts, DM Neil, and I am AKA, dang it, it's rare that I mess it up, but I'm leaving it in, AKA Jote Maniac.
Summer Brain. Hey, everybody. It's me, your other host, DM Celeste, AKA Sea Witch.
Dun, dun, dun. So,
here we are.
Part of me really wanted this article title to have the same error that I feel like I constantly do. And I know I'm not alone by any stretch of the imagination, where it's like, oh yeah, this to one of your players. And inevitably that's not true. You're not going to do something to the player at your table. Inevitably it's typically to the player character.
Yes, yes.
So we are tying back to an article, and this one is entitled 5 Ways to End a Character.
See, okay, I get it. Like, if you emphasize different words, this could be a very antagonistic article.
Yes. And so I entitled the exercise, the conversation we're going to have, as Sunset Riders. Because I feel like that's going to be one of our options here, that they will just ride off into the sunset.
Right, because this article is actually about, like, retiring a D&D character.
Yes.
Like, advice on that, and wrapping up a story arc.
Yes, and Sunset Riders is a fantastic arcade game, and if you've never played it, then you would not understand the reference of, bury me with my money. But yeah, it's entitled 5 Ways to End a Character, and it is from none other than J.R. Zambrano, who we just had on the podcast because I felt compelled to just reach out.
We talk about his stuff so often, right?
Your email address is plainly stated at the bottom of many articles I've read.
Why not?
Would you like to talk on this podcast? And he graciously said yes, and came on and spent some time talking about DMs should steal everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice.
And I'm also a huge fan. This is the first time I've ever seen him do this. But he has like YouTube links.
Yeah, like clips of of moments in movies and shows. It's awesome.
Yeah, showing like perfect like pop culture reference examples of the exact things that he references. So what's our first way to end a character?
Yeah, so we've got these 5 on here. Okay, how far we've come is the first one. So you often hear the term character arc get thrown around, how a character grows and changes. Where do they start? Where are they now? So now kind of hearkening back to that origin story, you can basically retire a character by looking at that story and seeing, hey, did they complete that? Right? So building and emphasizing that arc that they started with in the beginning. Do they actually achieve it? You know, focusing on that moment, how they arc. So like, where do you want to go next? You know, has your character achieved a big life goal? So focusing on that is a great way to end a story. Because it's like, you know, if you made that character that was all about getting that revenge because, you know, their village was slaughtered by, you know, devils. And then, you know, 10 levels later, they've actually gone into hell and killed the devils. Like, what a cool way to send off a character.
That's awesome. It also makes me think of, and there's this video for the Monster Squad ending. My thought is also the ones where, like, it cuts to, like, a short still frame of the character, and then it's like, so-and-so got married to this and has 3 kids and are happily living in the village that you saved in the first
Where
start.
are they now? Yeah. Like, that sort of, you know, yeah.
Yeah, so it also makes me want, like, if I really, like, just really knew there was an epilogue night coming and had like side conversations with multiple players and like built basically a PowerPoint to play at the end of the final session.
Yeah.
This is kind of where I would go with it.
Definitely. That's a very sweet thing to do. Also, folks, if you haven't tried that already, you know, whenever you end a campaign, definitely do consider like an epilogue game at the end, which is kind of, even if it's just, you know, getting together and having a pizza party and talking about the campaign, you know, and maybe like what campaign you want to do next. Like putting together an epilogue as a DM is like a really sweet and lovely thing you can do for your players, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Watching kind of, I can't really point to it because I am not the aficionado, as many are, of like some of the critical role stuff of like, what does it look like when you find them later? How did they end it? Because they're doing it for an audience. So then they're like looking at some of the either season finales or show finales of larger actual plays, because again, they're catering their content to a specific crowd. So they often will do epilogues pretty well.
Yeah.
Speaking of, and it's also interesting that I reference that because I also realize like different characters can have different epilogues. It's not that the whole party needs to follow in the steps of any one of these. They could all follow different ones. And the next one is on to the next adventure. Because inevitably you have that character that's like, they're not going to hang out.
I'm not done. This is my life, man.
Or it's like, this is all I got. This is all I enjoy. I'm going to go hunt the next big monster. I'm going to go to the land that has yet been conquered or seen or anything along those lines. And so, the person that will just keep going forever.
Yeah, this is great. They JR pulled a clip of Indiana Jones on this, and I'm like, oh yes, that's perfect, because he'll just keep coming back every time something gets stolen, right? It's just until next time, so it has that kind of comic book serial feel to it that makes, it feels really good for those action-oriented characters, knowing that you won't be focused on them, but they are still somewhere out there doing what they do best.
My favorite line is, some are just big, handsome himbos who kick down progressively bigger doors.
Yes.
So,
yes.
there you go. And the other one, we've kind of alluded to it. What is next up on our list?
Yeah, putting down roots. So this is the one, of course, a character doesn't have to be headed somewhere, but a character coming back, right? Adventure done. They settle down. Basically kind of like, this is the retirement strategy, right? It's like, all right, I've done my adventuring, or I've done it. So this is the example. The clip is Lord of the Rings, obviously the hobbits, right? Returning home, going back to the Shire, easing back into like normal life, or just that quiet life for those humble characters who really do just want to run a bakery or whatever the heck their dreams
are. I really didn't want to go in the first place.
Yeah, listen.
I like being back. Help.
I went because I had to, and now I don't have to, so I'm not going again. I'm done.
I made more. I could buy the entire village I live in with the money I made. So I'm good. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings one is another great example of what does everyone in the Fellowship do at the end. I mean, there's definitely very different stories for each of them. But yeah, mainly the hobbits just go kind of hang out, especially Sam. Sam is your best example.
Yeah, or, they go live with the elves across the sea, right, and retire, or they go back to their kingdoms and, rule those again and such and such. Yeah. And
this one, I really like this one. I don't know. I don't know that I would have thought of it, but I think it's a good way to end certainly a character arc, possibly more than like the character overall, but it could be the ultimate thing. And it's get a medal. And I
like that it has an exclamation point.
Get a medal.
Because it's a really good medal. Make it shiny.
And this one alludes to Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, where at the end, my favorite character gets the final line, and that is Chewbacca. Peter Mayhew always said that. He's like, I got the last line, yeah. But yeah, they just get a medal, and everyone cheers, and it's great. You have a final ceremony, and you could use that to also kind of fold in some of the other concepts of being whatever royalty, dignitary, person of interest that says the accomplishment, you as the DM reciting in some ways the accomplishments of the player characters. See how to end a player, but how to of that
get
and then give them
them
their medal. I know that I had at the Beetle and Grimm's, the Ghost of Saltmarsh, at the end when you save the town, you have a deed basically where they can, or like basically their accomplishments, and you can have all your players sign this document. So I had that. So when I finally closed out that portion of that campaign, I had them all sign that. So I have it.
Yeah. And, metal can be all kinds of different things, right, in your world. So like you said, maybe it's a certificate, a deed that gives them, their own castle, or like maybe they all get noble honorary titles, or maybe a god comes down and like, you are the chosen blessed cleric. Good job, buddy. There's all kinds of ways you can give this sort of recognition. And as long as it feels like a big old celebration, people are going to love it.
Speaking of celebrations, what's the last one we have?
of celebrations, R.I.P. Yes, celebrations, rest in peace. This is my personal favorite because I'm a drama queen. But sometimes characters sacrifice themselves nobly for the party. So this is obviously, you know, maybe that one character who does something big damn heroic to basically save everybody else, or somebody has to make a sacrifice in the end to, you know, achieve the big goal. So this is kind of one of those really nice ways to do that. And I will say, though, this strategy only works if the player buys into it and knows it's coming and agrees to do it. Because otherwise it doesn't feel like nice or special.
Yeah.
So just, this one comes with some caveats, but I love this one, probably of all the options for sure.
When you're in this one, you've often had a lot of emotional beats already related to it because they had to die to accomplish the specific ending. But I think it's buttoning that up because oftentimes that's going to happen in the moment, in the action, or to end the action. And is it that, you know, you attempt to resurrect them, but they don't because of whatever reasons. And instead you have some sort of ceremony. Is it that
like a funeral or celebration of their life, or, you know, something along those lines. I like this suggestion too, the scene of seeing the character in the afterlife, or maybe like what's going on with their spirit. Because especially if this was a religious character or whatever, if they can like rejoin family members or maybe other party members who died, like what a sweet moment.
Yeah. Could be where they have their final resting places, you know, a lot of times. And I think it's I feel like it's a trope. I don't know if I've seen it enough to call it that, but a trope where especially you have these iconic characters for your game and like inevitably the party rejoins as they each pass away.
Yeah.
And it's like no time has really passed and they're all, you know, eventually they're all back together, in whatever afterlife they have. I mean, if you look at the Marvel universe, there's multiple afterlives. If you look at Moon Knight or how Thor looks at it or, and so you could easily do that sort of thing for your party as well.
Have them go all slay dragons together in the afterlife. Oh.
Yep. So is there any that aren't on here? So I've been trying to think, like, I feel like something's missing, like ways that you can end a character's arc.
I feel like one thing you can do is like a betrayal thing. Like if a character becomes a villain is something. So this sort of plays with some of the concepts here, but I've used this one before. Like if a player isn't like really vibing with the character they've made, right? And they're interested in playing something else. Maybe working with that character to, oh no, maybe there's a moment they're corrupted or they turn against the party or they make some kind of decision basically where the player stops playing that character, but the character continues on as an NPC in some kind of villainous or antagonistic capacity. That can be a lot of fun, especially for people who are like willing to let go. They're like, you know, I'm not as attached to this character, but it'd be fun to like see them cause chaos or whatever in the world. So that's one way I've seen that happen too.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that as well. The other one I think of is, honestly, I just thought of it now only because of what you said. That's how this works. I've said it many times before, but the idea that because in many ways it's both the player and the character has lost the heart of adventure. Like they just don't have the drive to adventure any longer. And it's okay because, you know, inevitably they can make another character. They can get reinvigorated with the whole process, enjoying the newness, the new shiny. But that character and essentially that player has lost the interest of going on and adventuring. And so what do? I mean, at that point, you could also have them just be an NPC that's just the tavern owner or just works in the town that they frequent and they can still see them. Or, you know, it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. It could just be that they've decided that's it. I'm good.
Yeah, your wizard might decide, you know what, I was better suited for research in a lab. I'm going to go back to the lab, and I'll be that helpful NPC who does research for you, but I am not going on the adventure, right? And they become an information source, like an informant or someone who can help the party. You know, that's always a fun thing to do, for sure.
The other one that I thought of, and this is, I guess this is Chewbacca makes me think of this one. And we'll just call this, if we were making captions, Wookiee Life Debt, where somehow, some way, a certain character feels beholden to like a group of a group of people that they've interacted with along the way, and they choose to stay with those people. And it's not to say that they wouldn't then have their own set of adventures, but that's a way that they've connected and said, you know what? No, I think my character really would just stay here to help them rather than continue on with the quest that we have.
That's a good one. Yes, that's actually happened to me before. I had a ranger who basically, it was like an elven village, right? That was like just devastated by actually a creature the party brought there. And they felt so bad about, they're like, I need to stay and help these people rebuild. And this is like what my purpose is. And I was like, that's a cool, all right. Heck yeah. So I totally forgot about that. But yeah, absolutely. Another one that occurs to me is this is something that you would probably like organize with your friends ahead of time. But if you all make the decision that basically at the end of an adventure, there's going to be like a time jump. And it's assumed, the characters we're playing now are going to retire at the end of this. And then if there's a time jump, you might play the next generation, right, of characters. So this is something like if you want to play all the children of those previous individuals, or if they're, they mentor students or whatever. Now they're all like old professors teaching at an adventuring school, and you're playing the school students. So that kind of group buy-in of like, all right, our time is done. We're going to fast forward in time intentionally. And so those characters are still there, right? And everything they did affects the world. But it is forward in time. This is something we kind of did with Venture Betans. We actually had a pretty big year jump, right? And so the characters from the first campaign are out there in the world, but it's been like 10 years. And they're doing like huge, larger than life, political, like big hero stuff that has definitely affected the way the world is now. But they're almost like mythological sort of figures, right? In the modern in-campaign too.
Yeah. Makes me think of Boruto, where you're just like, we'd love to write more Naruto stuff. What if we just did it about his kid? Also, here's all the characters you know and love.
There you go. Well, this is like a fun thing. And, so many games like play around with this, or ideas like moving forward the generations. Like it occurs to me like the Xanth series by Piers Anthony. It's like all the characters in the story are characters that the original characters knew, or the next generation of children or friends or relatives of those same original characters. And it just is like a really cool way to create this kind of cohesive family tree, and really makes your world feel alive with history that matters.
Yeah. So one of the things with Dm-Nastics is also to think about like what can you do, what can you take from this conversation, and how can you use it at your table. So one of the things that you could actively do is kind of figure out, either have it be a thought experiment that you're working through as the DM, or have open conversations with each of your players especially once you're potentially getting to these epilogue conversations.
End, right?
Have these conversations with your players to better prepare for that. I mean, I've certainly done it in the moment. That's how the GM Tim and I have approached closing out our cruise games, but that's different because I didn't know those people really until, the 5 days before I'm closing out their final moments. So I don't have that time really to prepare the same way. But at my home game, I absolutely have that time. So start to think of those conversations so that you're more prepared to make those moments what they can be for both of you, both you as the DM running it, and the player and their characters, to help like kind of end that arc or end that story in a really fulfilling way. Because that is sometimes, I feel like it's one of the deepest regrets anybody that plays this game has, is the unanswered questions.
Yeah.
It's both a very positive thing of like, I wonder if, I remember when we played, and like, what if we would have done this differently? And
whatever happened to that one NPC we never followed up with and had that super powerful magic item, right?
Those are so fun, but the part that gets the regret is oftentimes that game that just fizzles out, goes with a whimper, not a bang, and just sits there and languishes, and kind of in your mind, you always think, what would it have been like to finish at least that arc or part of that story. So I think it's an important thing. I had a group that was in a mega dungeon, and I realized that it wasn't fun anymore. But at the same time, I didn't really have a way that was getting out of there. It was also switching from Pathfinder into 5e. So it just made sense to close that chapter. And so I had, a huge epilogue session where we talked about what it would be like to go through the rest of the dungeon and how they did it, and then what they did afterwards. And then, so that's not a question for them. They know all the secrets about the dungeon. dungeon that they would have found out if they played through it. They know what their characters, how they would have ended up. And so that's buttoned up, good to go. And then we moved on to the campaign we're in now, which has been going for years afterwards.
That is definitely something I feel like it's really fun to do, especially if you're running a module or something pre-written, right? Like incorporating in that kind of epilogue session, right? After the things have done, you've resolved the character stories, going around and giving players a chance to answer, like, what would have happened if this? Like, what was the content we didn't see, and like answering those questions can be a lot of fun for your players and just a fun thing to do at the end of a campaign.
Well, speaking of fun things to do, I think we have did it. And of course, if you like this or any of the episodes that we've done, certainly go to your podcatcher of choice, leave us a rating and review, go on the internet, find us on social, like our post there. Shout out to JR as always for the great content.
Thanks, JR.
It makes our job of making this podcast just a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And of course, if you wanted to tell us about how you've ended characters, please don't admit to me or Celeste about how you've ended a player. You can always email us at dungeonmastersblock@gmail.com. And of course, if you go over to Twitter, maybe, you can find us at DMS_block, me at JoteManiac, and
me at C. Conowitch. And for everything else on the network, you can always visit blockpartypodcastnetwork.com. And a huge thank you, as always, to the bards over on Bombarded for our intro and outro music. You can find out more about Bombarded at bombardedcast.com.
Rather than let these mental gains go to waste, let's head to taking your supplements.
Taking your supplements!
I apologize in advance. Celeste, I hear that the supplement you brought really rocks.
Oh no, that was terrible.
I know, but I wanted to.
Right.
But now it's out there, and we can move past it.
It's out there. You've done it.
Yep.
You've committed that crime.
Yes.
You can't take it back. But yes, I want to talk today about The Geologist Primer, which is a fantastic new book that right now the Kickstarter is fulfilling. I'm eagerly awaiting my physical copy coming in the mail in a few days, which means it will be going out for general sale very soon. But The Geologist Primer is the next in a series of books by Double Proficiency, is the production company, written by Anna Urbanek. But basically this is the follow-up to the Herbalist Primer, which was like a gangbusters, Kickstarter that came out a few years ago. And essentially what these really cool books are a catalog of, well, in this case, rocks. So like gemstones, minerals. And what it does is gives really beautiful like art details, tells you real life facts about each of these things, and then also gives you magical properties, adventure hooks to tie into your fantasy RPG games. So there are these really cool combinations of like actual real world science, lore, and an awesome resource for game masters who want a little bit more knowledge or some ideas on how to incorporate these specific things into their campaigns. I'm super excited for this one in particular because gems are actually like a treasure item that is given out in, D&D. Mm-hmm. It's actually listed in the GM guide and everything. So I certainly want to know. I find myself often rolling on random tables and being like, what actually is a carnelian? I don't know how to describe that, right? Like, so these kind of books are an awesome resource specifically to help you, and also just like a cool life thing. Like, I read my Herbalist Primer book all the time just to like learn more about plants and how they've been like historically used in rituals and like their history. So definitely wanted to get in here and recommend that you folks, if that is something you are interested in, if you have a druid who just love rocks or, need to understand, like me, what the heck these stones are that are in your Dungeon Master's Guide, check out the Geologist Primer from Double Proficiency.
Yeah, I often refer to them simply as gems because I'm like,
you get 100 gold gem.
Yeah, or like, this is a diamond worth X value because it has a mechanical component potentially for your cleric. The other one I think of just to throw in the mix, if we've already got the Herbalist Geologist, Fungi of the Far Realms is another really good one that I have. It is nigh impossible to get, so I apologize for suggesting it. Where it directly comes from, out of stock. When I looked at several other places, you can get the PDF for $15, but there's something about having something that is akin to a field guide. Like there's something special or better feeling about having the physical copy with this. I find even more so than other things. Like, I often enjoy the PDF copy of the book that's 300 pages, and I'm looking for like a rules reference, and so I want to find page, because oftentimes, not to throw shade, I'll throw shade, and if you feel like you're in that shade, think about why. But there are places where it's like, there's just no index, kind of at all. That's weird. That's a weird
Very
choice.
weird.
I guess I guess it makes every book an adventure, because you got to dig around to find it.
You have no idea where anything is.
Yeah, so like Exalted Funeral, do they have it? Nope. Exalted Funeral says they would sell it, but they're out of copies. The Direct Place, Melsonian Art Council, they're out of copies. If you'd like to purchase it on Amazon, there's currently a copy up there for $5,000.
Whoa! What? So why did you recommend this? Okay, you know what? Ignore that. Cut the fungi based plot. Get some gemstone plots.
There's a PDF for a very reasonable price, and I'll have a link to that, because apparently a hard copy is just invaluable. A hard copy is its own treasure.
Yeah.
But with that, we'll turn out the lights and head out of the gym. But before we go, I want to implore you, the listener, to join the forums, the Discord, Twitter, and everywhere else you can find us, and take part in these challenges, exercises, and other amazing conversations being had.
To do that, head over to bit.ly/DMBanter and try some Dm-Nastics so your players don't ask, do you even live?